All right. Good night, everyone. So, couple checks here. Yes, we're live. All right. Thank you all for joining us for this another open mic session. We're here to discuss, what's topical and what's trending in the tech community, right? So, I'm gonna just start this off with straightforward question. You can raise your hands or yeah, raise your hands and then I'll pick who can go first. So we have, a nice, decent conversation. And then once you give your point, somebody else can counter that point or I'll add my piece and so forth. The usual open mic format. So is there anybody in here who doesn't know what vibe coding is? All right, great. That makes this way easier then. So for those of you who do vibe code, can you tell me how do you usually go about it?
Um,
Uh,
I
Go
oh,
ahead, Queen.
yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
can I go
Go
first?
ahead. Yes.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna put a general statement here to say I'm one against vibe coding, so I won't be participating unless I'm gonna talk against it. Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry, Queen. I didn't quite catch that. Can you go again?
Oh, I was saying that I'm against vibe coding, so I won't be participating unless I'm gonna give points against it.
Oh.
All
All right.
right.
All right. So before
Um,
we get to that, Oshane, you wanted to go ahead?
yeah, so I kind of understand where is coming from without hear the explanation, and for me, I'm on the borderline. I'm against it, but now and then I do it, but I don't do it directly. I mostly do it indirectly, meaning that have I don't do prompt engineering or have the AI a part of my access to my source code. I'll most likely just go on ChatGPT just how to do this, and that's the most I'll do. But yeah, I'm on the borderline.
All right. Marcus, I did see a hand raised. You
Yeah,
can go
yeah.
ahead.
No, yeah, I like the vibe. So sorry for the accent from Trinidad and Tobago, actually. I like the vibe code movement to a degree. A lot of these models are trained on React, HTML, CSS, Tailwind, and these kind of things. So they have certain like small little apps where I could just prompt. Like I mean, even care how good the code is or not because it's so small and like not really for like like any large user base. And that just kind of saves me brain power. I usually work a lot with Unity and like Fast API and stuff, Unity Game Engine. And the models got a lot, like Claude 3.7 is pretty good, but it can't really vibe code that. And most times, like if I prompt something, it's go and do something stupid. So I still kind of just do that myself. But like for those kind of like anything front end, I'll just vibe code that first and like I probably have to make like I literally vibe coded an entire kind of crud app with super base on the back and everything. And I probably change, I think I counted it like 8 lines of code myself like manually without prompting. And just like, yeah, like those things are like less important, and like at least in my brain than like the actual data structure and stuff which I had to design and stuff. So it's like it's not going to replace anyone's job anytime soon, but like for certain things, I'm just glad I don't have to think about crap and just like have something else write it for me, like be the code monkey. And I just be like, okay, that's correct and that's not correct. So yeah, have its place. It have its place. And yeah, and I like O'Shane had the thing about the giving out people the code. And I've run some of my stuff locally, have like a local Olama server. And you can use Clang connected to your Olama proxy or locally or whatever. And that works pretty good too.
All right. Did anybody have anything they want to say regarding what Marcus just said?
Um, can I go? I didn't raise my hand, but can I
Yeah,
go?
man, you can go.
Okay. Yeah. So listening to what Marcus said and O'Shea said, I I can agree to an extent because my definition of vibe coding is literally entering a prompt, getting the result, copy pasting the result. or literally having an entire file, copying it, pasting it into ChatGPT or some other AI, and then just asking it to do something and then taking the result as is. That's what I define vibe coding as. Um, if you're gonna ask it to do something specific, show it this line of code, accept what it says, and then maybe refactor it or just use it as a working point. I don't really think that's vibe coding. That's just a part of the normal development process, I would think. But like, I really hate when people take something, put it into a large language model, and accept it as gospel, and then just drop it somewhere else. Because if it's small, that's fine. Some Python script or even some other type of script, even for gaming and stuff, that would be fine. It's not detrimental. It's not going to do any logic per se. It's not going to interact with any APIs. That's fine. But what I have a problem with is people who are going to drag and drop code. That's my issue.
I can second that because I've been on a couple coding project where I saw someone use AI generated to output like code. The code on the surface made sense, but it's not the expected response or structure that the project used. So in essence, like you said, if they take it as gospel without reviewing, writing tests or anything to say, okay, this works well within the project and give all of the, thumbs up. Yeah, that's like you said, that's where the problem lies. So for me, like when I do use it, well, again, I kind of use it on a borderline. I always review and then say, oh, this doesn't make sense, improve it and so forth. But I try not to get into that space as much as possible. It's very tempting though.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Wait, was someone going ahead? Hello?
I think Pi had his hand up, but
Oh, okay.
I don't think he you wanted to say something, Pi? I think he's having microphone issue because he unmuted, but I'm not hearing anything. So I think Andrew, you can go ahead until he resolve his microphone issues.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so for me, kind of just want to really zoom in on what both of you said previously, but to really kind of narrow down and really define what vibe coding is because I think maybe some may take it as just general prompting and using and maybe reviewing, but it's more narrow, I believe, in that vibe coding is just you enter your prompt and you get that code and you put it in somewhere and you move on. And yeah, this has a problem where typically, your code needs to be reviewed and all of that for errors. You can't just accept what the model spits out as gospel because I've really been getting into it and yes, sometimes it gives nice stuff, but a lot of the times you have to really coax it to get what you really want out of it. So I think that's the main thing there to really just keep in mind. But on the other hand, I think it can get somewhere because there are, like, I guess you can say there are two different ways you can approach it. You can just copy paste something into a chat, and then when you get the result, you put it back in a code, or you can use something more agentic, like Goose or whatever it may be. And I've used that a couple times, and it kind of just blew me up because it's like I just told it to implement something and include tests for it, and it went, it did the implementation, it created the test and it ran the test and it went into a loop until everything was working. But of course, I ended up going in and really checking to make sure that the tests are actually testing the stuff that I expect to be there, and that the coverage is up there and all of that. But yeah, it's a situation where you just have to really understand what is going on with the model, and also how, I guess, important, you might say, the particular thing that you're creating it, the reason you're creating it for, how important that is. In a big project, you definitely want to do a review, but if it's just some small app, some quick thing, a demo, whatever, just vibe it, I guess, if you don't have that much time.
Yeah. Noted on that. I do agree. One thing I think most of us can agree on um is it's supposed to be an assistant, not the gospel. And we touch on multiple times what vibe coding is. So I kind of just want to like go over that a bit, like get the formal official meaning of it out of the way. So I'm going to read it as it is. Vibe coded is an emerging informal term that describe a new style of programming where developers use natural language prompts to vibe with AI using large language modules. Typical large language models like ChatGPT, GitHub, Copilot, and so forth to generate modified brainstorm code without rigid structure or strict planning. So cases like this, there's a line by line in a methodological fashion. By coding is more like jamming by doing prompt engineering that's supposed to be an assistance instead of what's this? Instead of building something fully. So that's the definition, like informal definition for it. And I think most of us pretty much are saying the same thing at the end of the day. One of the things that I think we also should touch on, because we touched on like some of the good thing and some of the bad thing. But and when it come on to how can we procedure wise, how can we improve the way that we do development with AI? Anyone has any thoughts on that part? I mean, we touch on, code quality, doing checks, but is there anything else that you guys have in mind that we could do or others could do?
Well, as I said, the main thing I would say is you can't just throw something into a chat window and take out what it throws back at you and really use that. The first or the second draft usually doesn't work according to expectation unless it's something really simple. The main method that I see that really works is to use an agentic framework. So this is something where you have the model actually using tools. With it's the whole other kind of thing. You started with a prompting, and nowadays you have a tool use as a new thing where essentially, well, there's a protocol out there, the model context protocol, which is created by Anthropic, and basically you use that to make various kind of tools. So you can use that to make something to read your file system, edit your files, or manage your Git repo, manage Docker containers, whatever it may be. Create a RAG setup. All of that is exposed. And incorporating tool use into your model use means that now you have these guardrails in place, because as those tools are used, there are certain checks that are automatically done, and if if you send something off and the model requests some result, it really needs to send back a particular format, which is usually in JSON or whatever, and then it's going to take that result and put out a certain output. And if anything there mismatches, then it's going to retry and retry until something that is properly shaped according to expectation is returned. So that's where I see it going. The main issue, the main con with that is that it can get pretty pricey because the token count is going to keep on increasing as that context window increases with all of that information. But yeah, that's pretty much where I see it.
All right, so Quinn, I see you have your hand raised. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I 100% agree with what the previous speaker was saying about having those reviews and checks in. As my main solution would be to just have those code reviews, if you're going to be coding as a part of like any team or creating a solution that is going to serve not just you, but like be a part of a code base. Got to have that code review in there. And one funny thing that I've used and allowed my team to use and encourage them to use is to actually use AI to review code for you. Because sometimes we have like PRs for stuff that I don't know anything about what they're doing, but it has to be reviewed by somebody to see if it makes sense, see if it introduces any vulnerabilities, and literally running that through LLM will show you wonders because I think it does a better job at pointing out what's wrong than actually fixing stuff. So that using AI to help you, I bet your code is also good, ironically. Point of issue though, to don't do this in secure environments, such as like if you have your own, AI model that your company has downloaded onto their servers and just use internally. You don't really want to do this like with public AI models jumping and putting code in there for review. Don't do that. My company has their own separate thingy in which you can input into that. So that's the caveat to actually using AI. But you can never beat human intervention in terms of reviewing code. So that's my main point. Like code reviews, team leads, people who know what's going on, looking at the code and can identify when something inherently just doesn't like it makes sense. Yeah.
One thing to the discourse, because I should probably give some background of myself. I'm a co-founder of a company called CoPlay. So we're doing like a AI Copilot inside the Unity game engine. And it at least when we started CoPlay, it took a lot of fine-tuning and other things to kind of get the models to not waste your time and be correct. And like when Claude 3.7 came out, the model itself was just so much better at things like Unity. They're very simple things. I think that was mentioned before. You can do a lot of simple things with these models, just working with the environment. And like CoPlay got just automatically better because the base models that we use were just better. The frontier models were just better. And it's an interesting thing where like the image was shared before with someone who vibe coded an app, sell it, didn't do jack for security and pay the consequences for their lack of interest of making an actual production ready app or knowledge too, and the willful ignorance of it. But there's like this thing where I do keep seeing the frontier models, these big models, like getting like better at being able to go from like I still feel like they're just very much ground zero, but like it's I don't know when is that time in the future where you really can't just vibe code, right? And yeah, it's like it may not be that far away. I think the biggest thing for me is it's super expensive. Someone built like a demo with us using CoPlay and built like a kind of racing thing. And it's with all the prompts, it costs like $15. And I'm like, well, you could probably just go on YouTube and for half an hour and figure out how to do that demo. But I mean, they're willing to pay it for these things. That's fine. But yeah, it's like there's a real cost to it. I'm sure there are companies who are willing to just pay it and move on with their life, but I don't think it's cheap yet. I'm waiting for China to come out with the next cheap model to break up the system again. But yeah, so like there's a real cost to it. But I do see a lot of, in a fairly short space of time, a lot of developments where I could imagine in the near future, we could have something where you could meaningfully, genuinely vibe code a lot more than what we could do now. Yeah. It may not be that far away. I don't know.
Question though, which is kind of, well, so of course there's prompt engineer, what you mentioned, and so forth. My two follow-up question, and this gear towards like the title of this open mic. One is do you think people will still be using Stack Overflow heavily in the next few months, years, and then the next to follow up to that is like junior to even senior devs, like what do you think will happen? Like are more junior devs who will not know actually the fundamental of coding and developing software. They just rely heavily on AI. So yeah, those are my two questions. What's your thoughts on those?
Okay. I have a hand raised. I don't know if you can go first.
Go ahead.
But for your first question about Stack Overflow, you can never get rid of Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is the grandpa. But that's just the old person in me speaking. However, like Stack Overflow is pretty large in terms of its Q&A. And even if we don't continue to use it, it's still gonna be used in order to feed the LLMs. Funny, you know. But I can admit that the use of it is going to diminish. It has been diminishing, but you're gonna have people like me who still use Stack Overflow, still answer questions, and still post questions on there because sometimes the human context is very much missing from any, GPT, any LLM. Human context isn't there, and Stack Overflow offers that most of the time, as long as you don't ask stupid questions. And the second one is what was the second question? Oh yeah, about the what do you call it? The younger generation. I am already seeing it myself. They are definitely going to have a lot of shortcuts, and because shortcuts are there, it'll propel them to move to certain places where I won't say they won't belong, but it will put them in certain positions where they won't have the fundamental experience and knowledge, or won't seek to even get that knowledge to do what they need to do. And until something happens, that's when they know that, probably should have done a little bit more foundational building before I ended up doing XYZ. So yeah, it definitely negatively affect our younger generation is and will continue to do so.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Andrew, you have your hands up?
Yeah, so regarding the Stack Overflow thing, as I see with that chart there on the screen, yeah, usage is really tanking, but it really doesn't matter that much. Sure, some people still use it, but in a way, it's still being indirectly used because I think it was last year, year before last, more likely last year, early last year or so, they got a deal with, I think it was Google, maybe a couple others to train data, and there's a lot of hullabaloo about it, and a bunch of devs were saying they're gonna delete their answers and all of that stuff. But yeah, the data and Stack Overflow is already in a couple models out there, because even before that explicit deal was made, I'm pretty sure that they scraped all of it. So yeah, the knowledge is there. It's just a matter of knowing what to prompt to get the answer you need, and this applies to pretty much every other public site. And on the effect on youth, well, I see it as a evolution, because if we really look at the history of computers, we're coming from so far from computers big as entire wall. Then we have punch card system. Then we have assembly. Then we have C. Now we have stuff like Python and JavaScript. It's a continuous evolution. We don't have punch cards anymore. We have very few people doing assembly. There are still some, but very, very few. There are more doing C, but less. And again, it's just a graduation. So this is just the next thing, which will really pick up steam and help to make people a lot more productive. Even you won't have to learn Python anymore, because you'll just be using your natural language. And yeah, so what the way how I see things changing in that regard is that the next generation won't be learning to code per se. They'll be focusing more on the higher level stuff. So it would be more creative problem solving and critical thinking, as opposed to, oh, we need to get the syntax here right, and we have to run a linter and all of those. We have to know how to manage Git. All of those things are just going to more or less disappear, except for the very few who want to drop down to that level now and then. So that's me.
All right, so it was Kevonte and then Marcus after.
Yeah, I was just more or less I really and truly I'm agreeing with what Andrew said. Like I feel like this is just the next phase in coding. Like people want to say it's vibe coding, but I just think it's but to harp on what Andrew was saying, like think about it like this. First I had assembly. People used to have to code in assembly, and then people had to code in C, and then from C to Python, and then there's a gradual movement from using all those different types of languages to using human language. Python is a good example. It's more resembles human-like language. So I guess really and truly, this is a natural evolution of that. Because people generally consider stuff like Python and stuff like that high-level languages, right? And that's and like it uses just to use natural human language. I feel like that's a good direction to go in, because you can have it's a case where now you can focus more on more pressing tasks instead of having to focus on more tedious tasks, like for example doing certain computations. Now you can just have AI kind of help you do that, so you can focus on solving the general problem, because generally how I see it is just like it helps you solve smaller problems, like smaller tedious problems, so you don't have to think about it and you can just focus on the bigger picture type thing. But what I will say, a downside is possibly is that if you don't have that strong fundamentals in coding, like I feel like the new generation of code is probably not gonna, because of the introduction of AI, probably won't have that fundamental understanding of coding, which I will say that probably schools have to go kind of think there, change their approach to teaching stuff like that, I would say. And I feel like I am on board for schools having to, instead of trying to alienate and like demonizing the term like vibe coding, is like find out workaround. So like the fundamentals will still stay there, because the fundamentals are very important in my opinion. But yeah, that's just my 6 cents. 6 cents on it. 2 cents on it, I should say.
Sure.
Yeah, Marcus, you can go.
Yeah, no worries. No, it's that. Just any question of like, how we rely on like Stack Overflow and these kind of things. It's an interesting thing where people just keep going to LLMs, not just for coding, like for anything, right? Um, like, if you drive a car and then you get a self-driving car, after a while you'll get rusty with driving a car, and you kind of lose how to do it now. And similar for these things, if we just have a LLM writing code for you, you'll kind of get rusty writing code for yourself. And the more important thing that LLMs don't do well is they say vibe coding, but nobody say vibe debugging, right? So you have an LLM writing code. Ideally, you should be the brain to debug these errors, and you don't already have a vibe debugging movement. That's the unfun, sexy, but that's the thing that's actually make it very useful for software development, right? And when you think about the whole thing of Stack Overflow, like it should you think about the traffic dying down, people using it less, people just ask chat. I mean, and I use ChatGPT search and I'm not trying to be like on some high horse, right? I prefer that over Google. Google search is so much crap now for me. But you do these kind of things and people may not use ChatGPT search, just ask it for the answer directly. And they get something back and they just don't think about it at all. And that's far beyond coding. That's just for almost anything and everything. I see people asking ChatGPT about Trinidad and Tobago laws. I'm like, just get a lawyer. You have some free ones too. It's just risky behavior. And just like philosophical, just say Stack Overflow die. What are the models going to be trained on when we stop writing content? Right? It's like I don't think there's we're using AI for everything. And that what is AI going to be trained on next if humans stop creating things to actually put on share for other humans to read? So I feel like I know all the hype and everything, we're not thinking about even how to maintain this hype in a sustainable way. But yeah, we'll see how it works out.
Um, I saw that Irinsky posted something in the chat about being trained on LeetCode. I would not use LeetCode as a form of like they call it natural language processing or Q&A. Reason being, like most LeetCode stuff that I've seen are structured questions that require a specific answer with specific runtime constraints or specific problem solving constraints. Like LeetCode is so formally structured to me. I don't really think it would serve as a defeat for Stack Overflow, which is a lot more human misunderstandings and general questions. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that.
They don't need LLMs don't need any more natural language training. They don't. The only thing that they've been training LLMs on is procedural operations. So they're getting it better at math. They're getting it better at code, recognizing code patterns. They don't really need the whole, asking, being able to interpret a human instructions. They're very good at doing that already. Like no new LLMs are really doing a lot of work on that side of it. They're just doing all the work now and getting the responses to be predictable and accurate.
Yeah, but like LeetCode is like nothing close to actual software development. I won't lie. As much as it can help them to get really good logical things, when you're dealing things at scale, 100,000 million users and stuff like that, the hash map isn't the big issue. You probably have to think about networking as well, load management and these kind of things. So I feel like that can help to a point, but it's still not ready to take it all the way there.
Yeah, I 100% agree because like there are so many times where using these pre-trained models, it just doesn't do what you're asking it to do. Like you explain it a couple hundred times and it still doesn't understand until you like pick out a portion of the code and say, hey, this line here on line 23 is saving to a hash map when it should be saving to a set or something. And then it's like, oh, I didn't see that. And it's stuff like that that makes you figure out if it's understanding what you're saying to it, or it's just like a procedure where it just starts to regenerate something where it didn't really learn anything.
And like it's also like architecture, you know. So I had this app I had to work on, and we save into like DynamoDB, Redis, and we need to do something like Postgres as well. So it could ask the LLM to support Postgres, and it'll just save to Postgres. But again, like at the scale that app was running at, it was actually better to set up the event queue and have our next process saved to Postgres, so you don't block other things, and you have, online transactions, and you have like the OLAP afterwards to do analytics and whatnot. But again, like Vibe coding don't get the full intent. Like if I give it a prompt to like save to Postgres, it will just write on like some code that saves to a Postgres DB with some environment variables or whatever. But our solution is not going to be like practical for the actual system, you know? So, yeah.
Okay, so I think regarding the whole quality thing with LLMs, to something that we really need to keep in mind that probably many people don't really consider it much, but they really need to keep in mind that LLMs are just essentially next token predictors. They aren't quote unquote smart in the way that we would really use the word and consider the meaning. It's just essentially, well, Karpathy put it as it's just a zip file, and you give it a string, and it's just predicting the most likely next string, the most likely characters that come after that. So if you give it something like HE, then maybe the next thing it predicts is a L, and then another L, and then a O, and then it just goes forth with stuff like that. So we don't really consider that to be smart per se, but that's what it's really doing. And what makes it so valuable is that it has the entire internet, more or less. The entire web is in that zip file. And so there is a very high possibility that it predicts the next a series of characters in such a way that it answers whatever query you give it. That's basically what it is there. So if there isn't enough of what you're expecting or what you would like in that file, then it's not going to predict very well.
I think that I'm interested in understanding a little bit more about the definition you guys have of vibe coding, because it's very broad, and I think the way that I'm hearing it being used most here is to talk about having a code agent like a Devin, that style of vibe coding where you just say build the entire Facebook clone for me, and then it goes off and does the whole thing. But vibe coding is a lot bigger and broader than that. People who use the LLM to just be more language agnostic. For instance, I have a C++ code segment, and I want it in Java, and I just say translate this to Java. That's also vibe coding. People who focus only on the algorithmic solutions to things, so they don't use agents any at all. They literally use um, the autocomplete side in the IDEs like VS Code or GitHub Copilot or whatever. They would say something like for loop starting with 0 all the way till whatever, and they list out the variables and everything, and then the autocomplete assistant will just write the syntax for what they're saying. All of that is vibe coding as well, and there are very many different levels to it. And a lot of what you're saying doesn't apply across the board to all uses of LLMs in coding assistance. It applies mainly to that top level one where you're just saying one simple thing and then having the agent build out the entire thing for you using its own decisions and whatever. And even that is getting very, very impressive now. So I think maybe if we define it more specifically, it might help.
Shane had given a definition earlier. That's the one that we were working with. So I don't know if you want to reiterate that one, but that's the one we're working with here. Shane, you can reiterate, please, because that's the one that I think, like, what you're explaining, it sounds, some of the stuff sounds like part of the normal development process, like code completion, IDE intelligence. That's part of the normal, like, development process. But in our definition of vibe coding, it's literally a drag and drop, copy paste. That's what we're working off of, where the agent or the LLM basically gives you a result and you work with that result as if that's the end all be all. Or you ask it a question and it gives you a result and you take that result as it must work. The LLM gave it to me, so it should work. And then you go on about your day. That's kind of a brief of what we're working with for vibe coding.
Right, but it all comes down to the size of the chunk of logic that you're asking the LLM to do for you. Like if you're breaking it down to very, very small sizes of chunks, it's almost identical to actual coding. But if you're having it use it like an abstraction tool and having it build entire systems for you, then that becomes a little bit more chaotic and a little bit more dangerous. I really don't see any issue with using it on very small chunks of logic, which you already know what you want to do, but you really just can't bother put those things into place because it's something you have to do every time when you do it or whatever. And really, it's just a bother. It doesn't really require any kind of expertise. It just requires time to sit down and copy and paste over or type the same things over and over and over and over again. Like function.
I do apologize for cutting you, but I slightly to disagree based on like previous conversation that we had. So the thing about vibe coding is, and you're right in the sense that it's similar to programming, but where you kind of I had a slight issue with where there's no expertise and so in essence vibe coding is supposed to be an iterative process. You refine based on prompt engineering to get it to a point where everything looks real good. But it's like fine wine, or it's like a beautiful girl. You never, well, let me not go there. It's like a beautiful house. You don't know how good it is until you start to live in it. So on the surface, everything might look fine and dandy, but when you start to put it in production, you realize some hiccups whereby, the expected, even though the code looks okay and it's outputting okay, there might be some edge scenario that the generated code didn't take into context. And nitty-gritty ideas become an issue where a minor issue that it didn't take consideration can create a catastrophic scenario. So in essence, vibe coding is supposed to be an iterative tool that you use with these LMMs, while you also do your due diligence, do testing, review, and ensure that the expected behavior in production when it come on to integration works well. And it doesn't matter how small of a project it is, things can become very problematic, especially when someone don't understand what it's being output and how it affect what they're trying to accomplish. And I posted the definition that we're working with for vibe coding in the chat. Okay, so a bit of silence there. So let me ask another question.
I have something I'd
go
like
ahead.
to see. So I've listened to both points so far, right? But look at this person in particular who made 87,000 monthly recurring revenue. What would you say to someone like him?
I would say Puss and Dog don't have the same luck.
Mike, I have another question. What would you say to a real quote unquote programmer who does an application and it has more bugs than the vibe coded application?
So it goes back to what you said, where vibe coding is similar to like an actual programmer. It's an iterative process, agile, refine, improve, and so forth. You have your test cases in place. So if a application has a lot of bugs in it, yeah, it does speak to the experience of the person, and it does speak to whether the person is taking code quality and functionality seriously. So in essence, once they have like integration tests, unit tests, and so forth implemented, that the expected behavior is met, then that application should have less bugs. So at end of the day, it all goes back to developers should do QA review and know what they're developing to ensure that functionality and expected behaviors are met, whether it's AI generated or human written.
All right, good. And so my next question is the different stages that you mentioned. You have the test cases, you have the security side of it, you have the DevOps side of it. In a traditional organization, these are all done by different persons. And I feel like when people knock out against vibe coding, they're putting something that one person did against something that about 50 people would have worked on, who all have extreme specialization um, in different fields. And then when you look at it, basically the application that the one person did performs, let's say, 70% of as good as the one that the 50 people with high specializations did. And then people will say, okay, look, see, vibe coding doesn't work. But the truth of the matter is, if a person was a cybersecurity expert, Vibe cybersecurity checked an application, it would be very good. Same way, if a DevOps person Vibe use Terraform or Kubernetes or whatever to set up a proper server environment or a deployment environment, it'll be very good. And so what I'm saying is that the efficiencies that are brought on by using LLMs to do the thing are undeniable. You have a situation where one person can now do something that it would have taken a number of people on a team to do. And okay, it doesn't perform 100% as well, but it performs orders of magnitude better than a one seasoned, serious, real programmer could have done by himself in the same period of time. So I feel like there's a lot of comparing apples to oranges when this debate comes up. And yeah, I think that if you put it in perspective, everything has to be in balance. I don't think anybody is really thinking that the different expertise are no longer necessary, although I'm saying that as time goes on, the edge cases are gonna get smaller and smaller, and the specialization that is going to be needed for the human in the loop is going to become way more intense. And of course, the people who know how to solve these problems are going to get paid more and more. But there's going to be less and less need for them, and there's going to be less of them as time goes forward.
All right, before you go, Andrew, let me just address three things. One, so I don't think it's anyone denies the undeniable that vibe coding or AI integration in our development flow is creating more efficiency. It definitely is. The issue is that we shouldn't take it as a gospel. And this is where we in this whole entire discussion, we are stressing on review, testing, and make sure that what the expected behavior is met. And yes, vibe coding can generate a lot of work that, of course, 10 developers or so forth could do. Maybe not. So first, I'm a full stack developer, so I'm across almost everything in development, and I've seen where vibe coding or any form of some AI engineering created a lot of problem than it actually solve it. And it goes back to, like someone said, that it sounds like a skill issue of that developer. So it again, so if the person is doing it manually and get it wrong, then it's questionable. And if they use AI but based on the incorrect prompts, incorrect information, as well as just not doing a full test to ensure that it works, it goes back to that developer not doing a job to test its own code or generated code that it works. That's really the meat of the problem, where should we take what is generated as gospel, or should we continue, iterate, review, improve, and make it better? Because that's the whole point of the software development cycle, to continuously improve and deliver. So yeah, with that said, I don't know if you want to comment on that, or Andrew, you can go.
All right. Yeah, the debate is getting interesting, I'll say. So just reminding you all that if you have anything you want to say, you can raise your hand, and then once acknowledged, you can speak after to put forward your points. So Andrew, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with the previous. Essentially, I kind of think we're kind of going off because of we don't fully agree with the definitions. We all have different takes on that particular definition. I don't agree with it quite, because I still consider vibe coding to be more, you just go along with the vibes as it suggests. You don't really do that many checks. You get this thing that works, and you go with it. Once you start to get into oh, I'm going to test this, I'm going to review the code here and make sure that these cases are covered, you're gone beyond coding on vibes. Now you're gone into full-on formal development with the assistance of AI. So I think that for me, that's where things are kind of going off. And I guess I'll just kind of say this about vibe coding. It will get you around 80% there, I would say. But after that, it kind of falls over. So like that thing about that guy with his revenue going there, yes, he got up that thing. But what's going to happen when it starts to run into the bugs? Because it's very likely that there are going to be edge cases there that are missed. And so it's going to be a thing where either it gets hacked, or something happen and full database get wiped, or some catastrophe just waiting around the corner. So that's where the real development is still required to get from that 80% to 95 to 99%. But I get also to, well, using AI for coding, not gonna say vibe code, using AI for coding is the coding ability of AI is going to improve more and more over time as well. So vibe coding itself is also going to improve over time based on those improvements. So we'll come back to the basics again. It's just an evolution. That's what it is. You start with something that doesn't work all that well, and over time, incrementally, you improve it, just like on a regular software project. You improve things over time. The AI is also the model qualities are also improving. It started out that initially we needed quote unquote expert prompt engineers to really communicate with models because they had to really understand the very nitty-gritty of each individual model back, what, 2 or 3 years ago now. And then now we're at the point where we have models that can reason and you can just give it stuff in natural language without considering that, oh, maybe putting a comma in this sentence instead of over on that part might change things to the point where it's very relevant. All of that stuff is gone now. There's a lot of improvement, and in the next couple of years, well, all I can really say, the sky is the limit. That's all I can say.
But Andrew, before you go, can I ask you this question? Why not think of vibe coding as a developmental framework, like waterfall method or agile method? Because with the same guy, is $80,000, how much about monthly revenue that he got on his own in like maybe 5 hours of work? He know if he runs into problems, he has the money now to actually hire programmers to fix specific issues. And there are also edge cases that you can only come up on when you have the thing out in production fast. So he's going to be discovering some edge cases that the traditional programmer who is going to sit down and take half a year to come up with something, and then by the time you put it out, it doesn't have the right product market fit. He will get the product market fit a lot faster than that person. So why not see it rather than being a be all and end all? Like, his story doesn't stop here. He didn't vibe code an app and then that's the end of his journey. His journey began there. So he started with a finished product and then continued to refine it as time went along, as opposed to starting with nothing and then trying to build up towards a finished product.
Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. I didn't really read the article that much, post, but yeah, it makes a full sense to really just vibe something particular if you're not in the field yourself, but that's where it really shines. If you're not a coder, then you just vibe up this thing and get it out there. If you're not a lawyer, then you just go ask a AI for some legal advice and hopefully you'll get through to the point where you want before you get in a trouble or whatever. But yeah, it's useful. It's really useful. The problem is some people might just stop with it right there and say, all right, I have this thing and hey, I see that it works. All right, time to retire.
But a
Yeah,
film
and
business, all sorts of problems exist. People going to do all sorts of craziness, whether they're real programmers or not. All sorts of levels of craziness has already always been done, and ultimately, what is going to come to the top are the people with the most stringent or most passion or the most obsession towards getting their idea out there. But I think at least now, when the barrier to entry is lower, people
Yeah.
who would have their ideas and could never get it out because they weren't going to spend 10 years learning programming. They didn't have the money to pay a programmer, can now get their ideas out. And I think the world is better off for that.
Definitely, I 100% agree. It pretty much just turned that adage from the past where it was like, what was it again? Execution is what matters the most, or execution is worth way more than idea, or something along those lines. Now we're at the point where it's the idea that matters because AI will just take care of most of the execution for you.
Yep, so now a perfect tool to win a pitch competition. All right.
All right, Queen, yeah,
yeah,
you can go.
okay, yeah, I was saying, yeah, I totally, I can agree with most of the things that you guys are saying. And vibe coding is already like it's an established style all by itself. Like there's no doubt about that. It's an established style, just like um, other types of programming, like fast or extreme programming. It's something that exists now, and we have to acknowledge that it's something that exists. And over time, it's going to become something probably when we call vibe coding anymore, because that's a trash name. but it's gonna be called something that will work definitely in tandem with creating a solution fully just off of AI alone, and then doing the rest of necessary work to improve upon it. Yeah, I think we're definitely gonna reach to that point, because just like when I was making Android apps with just purely Java, and then Kotlin came out and people were like, "What is this trash?" And now Kotlin is the de facto standard for Android development. So it's just something that, as long as we acknowledge it's there and then commit to improving it, is gonna get to where it needs to get to. But as it is right now, in the state that it is right now, it's not enough to supplement the entire program, which is what I think we agreed on.
All right, so let me jump in here. Couple weeks ago, I actually asked the CEO of Intellibus this. So for those of you that don't know, Intellibus had this, full-on AI hackathon a few weeks back now. It's been a while. In Jamaica, where I think essentially for the first time we had this hackathon where AI use was encouraged, and you could form a team, you go there, you would stay at AC Hotel, and get your idea together, then you present. There were several winners, because there was a lot of money to be won. There was also potential job opportunities and scholarships to the Intellibus Academy. According to him, when I asked him, is that vibe coding isn't new per se, is that the no code movement has been around for a very long time, and this is just its current iteration. So what would you all say to that?
I entirely agree. I remember when I was on the other side of the fence for a big part of my career. When Dreamweaver came out, I was very much against this whole notion of WYSIWYG editor for website development. I was a stringent, ardent purist that said, listen, you shouldn't even code with anything other than Notepad. And then when I left Notepad, I upgraded to Notepad++, and that is where I stayed for most of my career. I never touched WYSIWYG editors. I never believed in that kind of development. So it is something that has been there for a long, long, long time. And then I can clearly say right now that I did not do myself any much service by not adapting to that style of website development. I don't have any edge over the people that did it. And eventually, what happened was I got overrun because what the people who were doing, from the WYSIWYG editors to the templates, people who came out like with the WordPress templates, what they were able to do just steamrolled this by speed and the sheer magnitude of work. Now, what I could do coding from scratch, and eventually, I mean, I had to see it. This is a different level of abstraction, in the same way as you guys said earlier. COBOL assembly, and then you have C on top of that, which is it's just a more higher level language than assembly, and then you have Python on top of that. You have Visual Basic on top of that, and so I 100% agree with that. It's always been, and I don't think people who hold out and become dinosaurs do themselves much of a service, unless you're really gonna stick to something like real low level languages, and you're going to become a super doctorate in that, and you're gonna understand that you're gonna get one contract a year, and you just make it count.
All right. Oshane, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, just letting you guys know that we are actually, this is a bit of an announcement that we are planning to launch a e-commerce system soon for the Caribbean, multi-vendor system. So we are actually putting like the community t-shirts and community mats on there. So if any of you guys would like a jersey style community t-shirt like Developer 7, DevOps 10 and so forth, I dropped a link with a coupon code that you can use to get a discount. Of course, these merches pretty much geared towards helping the community to grow and do more workshop activities, eventually hackathons and conferences. So yeah, I dropped that link. Please support, and of course, if you find any bugs or so forth, it's a new system, just let us know so we can resolve it. Yeah, just dropping that plug in for a quick moment. You can continue, Jason.
All right. All right. So yes, I think the debate has been really thorough so far. Got pretty heated at one point. So I'm just gonna throw out what I think would be like. I want to hear if you have any closing arguments about whether or not vibe coding is good or bad for the industry. So you can go ahead.
Final words?
That's right. Present your closing argument and just bringing it back to what the actual debate was about.
Okay. Well, I guess not quite final, but final. But for me, I think vibe coding isn't even, well, it's definitely not the end of it. This iteration, I agree with coming from the last point that it's a lot like no code, because you're just, instead of drag dropping stuff, you're using text. Although also Anthropic has its artifact stuff, and OpenAI has its platform as well, where they provide so things that are really similar to no code, but are really closely bind with their LLMs. So yeah, it's still a evolving space. And regarding vibe code, the main thing with it that I see with it is that it's actually converting the natural language into code. And I see that as the primary problem where it's at right now, where it needs to get. And I'm kind of surprised that I don't see stuff coming out already. But where I see it needs to get is you prompt something in English and it gives you back English. That's where it should get. So you say, all right, create a store for me, and it creates a description of the store, a very detailed description of how the store should look. So whoever does the prompting can go through that. They don't need to understand the language or anything. They just go through that basically requirements file. And that's where you're at. That's now your quote unquote code. It's basically pseudocode, and that's translated under the hood for you. So that's what we'll eventually get to run at some point, maybe a couple of years or maybe a few months. Who knows? Well, yeah, that's where I see us going, because people don't really want to learn to code. People just want to create stuff. That's me.
All right. Any further closing arguments?
For me, don't take a gospel review, iterate, improve. That's the only way to go. Like regular coding with vibe coding or any form of AI programming assistant tool. Yeah, that's
For me, it's always a skill issue with any way you decide to choose. There are people who do vibe coding and are very good, people who do vibe coding and are surprisingly bad, like surprisingly bad. And so it's not a magic pill. And if you realize that, then I think it lowers the resistance to investigating it. If you're a good programmer, you'll be a good programmer with AI. If you're a bad programmer, you'll be an okay programmer with AI, but you're not going to go much further.
All right, just let me check the chat to see. What's this? Let's go to the grades. Come to the direction. Yeah. All right, and Tariq here saying, has anyone else had a problem with AI tools not being quite precise in making code changes? Sometimes because we are allowed to make decisions for us or because of the ambiguity of the prompt, it may make a decision that negatively impacts code that may have already been fine. Then you have to go in and try to fix those issues. With this in mind, it highlights how important it is to pay attention to the quality of the code output from these LLMs. And I believe this shows that vibe coding may not be the best approach for certain projects, as that approach to software development tends to overlook many things and would lead to a product that works but has many vulnerabilities and prone to have many defects, and such defects and vulnerabilities for some applications can have serious implications. So vibe coding, as I hear it, is being defined maybe best suited for early stages of the development like MVPs, prototypes, and proof of concepts. Well, that was a lot. Thanks for the contribution, Tariq. All right, so I think everybody has said their piece. Unless, does anybody want to comment on what Tariq said?
I fully agree. That's kind of what we've been saying earlier too. It gets you like 80%, but you have to go in manually and check and bring it to closer to 100 yourself or hire a team to do it.
Yeah. One more thing I want to mention, which is slightly off topic as well. Just a reminder that there's going to be a additional upcoming event, Senior Dev Connect, which is going to be on May 3rd of next month. There might be some events before then, but we'll update meetup if that's the case. But yes, Senior Dev Connect, we're looking to meet with senior devs with a company called Good Dynamics that is looking for tech talents as well as just to understand and give some more training in to developers in Jamaica. And Good Dynamics is a international company and they have a branch in Jamaica. So yeah. So if you're a senior dev or if you're not sure you are, yes, you can just come out and we do a good workshop and talk. That will be kept at UTech. So a pretty centralized location. So yeah, hopefully I see some of you guys there.
All right. Nice timing. Basically 9:30. So it's been a very interesting debate, We got to hear something from Jason Gill. Most of the time, AI tends to overcomplicate one-shot solutions, so you have to fine-tune it for simplicity for good results. Okay. All right. So it's been a very interesting debate. A lot of points were thrown here and there, and we got to hear really both sides about the good and the bad of, AI vibe coding. Some say, yes, this is the new iteration of no-code. Some say, no. Others are saying, be careful, it's not gospel. Well, for those of you who didn't get to join us, you can leave your comments online. The recording will be on YouTube on our pages, because it's an ongoing debate, something fresh that's happening in the industry in a sense. Regardless, I look forward to seeing you at our next open mic session next month, and thank you for attending.
Okay. Night to night.